Hey everyone, and welcome to Gupshop's webinar on building smart bots with NLP. We'll just start in a minute, just waiting for a couple of more people to join in. Okay, let's start. So I think it's clear by now that 2016 was the year of the chatbot. All chatbots rely on interacting with humans largely via conversation. And for a bot to effectively understand user input, it needs some natural language processing or NLP capabilities built into it. We'll talk a little bit about what NLP is, but basically we know that NLP tools have really progressed in the last few years, and this is what has really enabled the chatbot revolution. So today, welcome to today's webinar on building smart bots with NLP. My name is Sohan Maheshwar, and I lead developer relations for Gupshop. We have with us Shreyans Pashwakirti, who works as a developer evangelist. You can find our Twitter handles there as well. Feel free to tweet to us, during or after the webinar if you need any help with chatbots or whatever. Okay, so let's go to today's agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about the bot ecosystem, just a small overview of where we're at right now. And we'll talk a little bit about the role NLP plays in the ecosystem as of now. We'll talk a little bit about what makes a bot smart, right, and how you can really use an NLP effectively. We'll talk a little bit about our own product, which is a new product that we're going to talk about called NLP on the fly, and then we'll give you a little demo. So without further ado, we're going to start. So the current bots ecosystem is actually really interesting, right? About a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, actually, in April 2016, was the start of the bot revolution when Facebook Messenger opened up its platform for chatbots. Since then, at last count, at least Facebook Messenger has over 35,000 chatbots, and that's quite a lot. And I'm sure we'll get the more accurate figure at F8, which is going to happen like a couple of weeks from now. The big news is also that Facebook Messenger is going to introduce bots in group chats in F8. This was a feature that all of us as chatbot developers, as chatbot makers, were really expecting, but it's going to happen now, and it's pretty exciting. And now you can tell that bots are going to hit the mainstream really. What's interesting is that Skype, Telegram, Line, and Kik already support group chat. So you see that the ecosystem is already fairly evolved for messaging platforms to kind of be confident about chatbots in group chat. Apart from these platforms, you also have smaller, maybe not smaller platforms, but other platforms like Slack, for example, that have like millions of users, and pretty much every Slack team uses a bunch of bots. I couldn't find any accurate figures out there, but rest assured that bot usage on Slack is also really high. It's not just the messaging platforms, though. People are actually also using the bots a lot. Bots like Swell, which have like a lot of user connect and engagement, have more than 2 million users. Surprisingly, the Christian Grey chatbot, which is a chatbot from a character from 50 Shades of Grey, surprisingly, in less than a couple of weeks, it has processed more than 200K messages, and these numbers are just steadily shooting up. So users are using chatbots a lot more. They're kind of getting receptive to the idea as well. Now, most of the bots that we see right now are structured bots, right? I think when the whole chatbot revolution began last year, everyone spoke about extremely smart bots, but I think we all know that really didn't work out, and expectations were probably set wrongly. So most messaging platforms as well as bot developers kind of pivoted to using structured bots. This is an example of a pizza ordering bot where it is completely structured. You have menus and buttons, and to really guide the user in a certain way. There isn't much free-form text as such. As you can see here, you can click few buttons to order your pizza. Similarly, there's a customer service bot here, which is for Deaf TV, which helps you. It's more of a wizard, right? It's asking like a setup wizard that like you used to have back in the day of Windows 98. Where there are a few buttons and there are flows essentially that a user can try out to reset router, to kind of figure out why customer service is, or rather try figuring out why internet's not working. Similarly, we built a chatbot for MWC 2017. This is a small screenshot from that, but essentially, just giving you a lot of information about the event, what sessions you can visit, what after parties you can go to, a few FAQs, but most of it was completely structure based. Now the thing is, at least from what we've seen, the bots that actually do really well are a good combination of structured and unstructured, which means that you're using some structure, which is with buttons and menus, and you're using, some conversation and some text based. So that way you're still making sure that, your bot is still behaving human-like, and you have the whole chat paradigm, but you want to lead your user down a certain path. You want to have like stories within your chatbot, and which is why you need to have few menus and buttons and navigational items. A good example is the kayak chatbot. A kayak chatbot essentially is a chatbot which you can use to book flights and hotels. So here's the flight story, or the flight navigation path, if you will. It first asks me, where do you want to fly from, and I say, okay, Bangalore, and I set my location to Chicago. So then it asks me, when do you want to fly out, and I say a month from now. So it's using natural, that's completely conversational based. I'm not giving it a hard date. It's very informal tone. I'm saying a month from now, something a human would understand. And the NLP kind of figures out what dates I'm looking at, and it gives me results. So it's using the whole structured and the conversational approach really well, and that's the sort of bot that we seem to be, that seems to be really popular with the users right now. Now, we've spoken about NLP. I've used the word NLP a lot. So let's maybe talk a little bit about what NLP actually is, and in an attempt to actually define it. Also, at this point, I'd like to tell you, if you have any questions, please feel free to ping us on GoToWebinar, and we'll get to as many questions as we can during or at the end of the webinar. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about natural language processing. I'm sure a few of you here are already familiar with the paradigm, or have already worked with NLP tools, but for the benefit of the audience, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So essentially, NLP is a way for computers to kind of analyze, understand, and derive meaning from human language. Now, if two humans are talking, I think we are able to understand conversation, and even then there are a whole lot of rules, or there has to, for instance, both humans have to probably talk in a language both of them understand. Even then, both humans have to speak in like a certain syntax and certain grammar and stuff, so that both understand. So in the same way, a computer kind of needs to figure out what a human is saying. So you need natural language processing to analyze, understand, and derive meaning out of that. In essence, it's essentially converting human conversation to structured data. Software unfortunately cannot comprehend human conversation in the free form sort of manner that it is, but when that human conversation is converted to something structured, software, or like a chatbot or anything else, can actually understand what's happening and do things based on it. A large part of NLP kind of works on two key concepts which you should be really familiar about. They are intents and entities. I'll talk a little bit about both of them. So intents are essentially a mapping between what a user says and what action should be taken by a software, right? It is the intent behind the statement a user makes, right? For example, you can look at the example in the slide. A user is asking a chatbot, what is the weather in London? Here, the intent of the user is to find out the weather, right? So essentially what you see in the middle there is your NLP tool that processes that the intent is, say, weather query or weather search, for instance, right? So almost every sort of conversation or every sort of line of conversation will have a certain intent behind it, and getting or extracting that intent out by a natural language processing tool is really key to kind of figuring out what your bot should act upon. The second concept is entities. Entities are essentially specific to a domain as a way of mapping natural language phrases to canonical phrases that capture the meaning. For instance, here, when the intent is to find out the weather, the one entity here is the city London, right? Now, the entity can change for this statement. It could be what's the weather in New York, what's the weather in Madrid, what's the weather in Amsterdam. The entity, which is a city name, is changing in every stage. The intent remains the same, but the entity is changing. Let's look at a slightly more complex example. So here the user is saying, help me find a Chinese restaurant in Mumbai. Again, the intent here is to find a restaurant. So the natural language processing tool kind of understands it's a restaurant search. And there are two entities right here. One is the city, of course. Again, it could change. It could be Mumbai, New York, whatever. And the second one is the type of restaurant or the cuisine. In this case, Chinese, but it could also be Mexican. It could be Indian. It could be whatever. So figuring out these intents and entities from conversation is really the key to having like a good natural language processing, a good conversational aspect to your chatbot, right? So we'll talk a little bit about smart bots and how they use natural language processing, how they process intents and entities a little bit. So what actually makes a bot really smart? So there are a few things. One is, of course, like we said, basic NLP. So we spoke about extracting intents and entities. There are also a few other things that chatbots can do that really elevate it to the tag of a smart bot. One is dates and numbers. Again, I showed you the example of kayak earlier where I said a month from now. Similarly, in the image right here, you can see at the bottom, I've said 3 days from now, and it's given me the date 3 days from the date I've taken the screenshot. Essentially, it's kind of figuring out that even though in the screenshot you can say something like 12/2 to 12/5, which is 2nd December to 5th December, and I've still said 3 days from now. It's still kind of figured out what the actual date is, what 3 days from now would be, and it's acted upon it. Typos, that's something most sort of NLP tools have built in. Most people are going to type on the go, they're going to type on their mobile, so kind of handling for typos is something built into it. And locations, right? Again, most NLP tools, and we'll talk about a few of them, will have support for famous city names, famous country names, just so that the tool knows when a user is talking about a certain location. Something that's very cool and I think like a pretty interesting concept is slot filling, right? So essentially it is very similar to the concept of filling forms as you would on, say, an app or a website. Now in an app or a website, it was rather simple. You'd have like, say, 3 text fields, and you'd put like a validation in each of them. If a user didn't fill one of them, you'd throw an error message saying, you've not filled this particular field, please fill it. Or if the user entered like a wrong input also, you could just throw like a validation piece of code there. With text though, and with conversation, it's a little different. I'll give you the example of the Hello Peg app. So here I've told the user it's an expense tracking chatbot. So I've said I've paid 300 rupees on a book for my colleague, right? So Hello Peg has its expense tracking, so it's taken in that input. So essentially there are 3 input fields here. One is who you paid it for, what you paid it for, and how much you paid it for, right? Now, if suppose I'd forgotten to fill in like 2 or 3 or 2 or maybe even 1 of these fields, over conversation, how you'd speak to a friend, you wouldn't just say error, that's wrong, right? You would actually ask for the other fields. So that's pretty much what we have done with this chatbot as well. In this case, I've said I paid 100. It's recognized that 1 field is filled. So it says, okay, cool. So who did you pay? So then I say, okay, I paid Starbucks, and it recognizes, okay, 2 fields have been filled. Okay, now what did you spend it on? Okay, it was a meeting, right? So it's recognizing and it's filling each of these slots based on what the user is saying. And I think that's the real smart way to do it, as opposed to throwing an error in the first statement when someone said, I paid rupees 100. The sort of dumb way for a chatbot to do this would just throw an error and saying, wrong input, or, please retry or try again. Instead, you're taking that little effort to be a little smart, and, you're giving it that much more like a conversational feel to make your bot smart. Something else that your chatbot can do to be smarter is sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis has been around for a while, especially in the realm of social media, but it can be very, very important with the chatbot. Essentially, what sentiment analysis does is it detects the tone of a conversation. Sometimes the user might be angry, happy, sad. So essentially, what it does is it tells you, what the sentiment of those words that the user is using is. It can be measured categorically, which is just say, negative, neutral, or positive, or it can be numerically as well. We have, an integration with Microsoft Bing, who have a pretty cool sentiment analysis API. So what they do is they analyze sentiment and return values from 0 to 1, with 0 being like really, really negative to 1 being really, really positive. And you can really use this. I think sentiment analysis is very important because you can use this in your chatbot. It's a great way to really deal with unhappy users, especially. You can, when a user starts maybe abusing your bot or saying like mean things, users is not getting what he or she wants out of it, and you can, change things accordingly, move user down a certain flow, and kind of handle the user and help the user out. It's also a great way to analyze your bot. If most of your users are largely happy, then you know you're doing something right. But on the other hand, if you know you're getting a lot of abusive messages or your users unhappy, then you know that you're doing something wrong. So it could be time to get back to the drawing board and change a few things about it. One bot that actually does this really well is the Hi Poncho bot. You can look at the example here. I've actually said something like "screw you, Poncho," right? And it's actually recognized that I'm angry, and it's replied like in a sort of funny way, saying, "Oh, okay, rude." And I've said like, "Yeah, whatever." And then it says, "I'm going to take a short break," and doesn't reply to me for a bit. And then I've sent back like a smiley, and it actually says, "Hey there." Uh, Another great thing that a lot of chatbots do nowadays, and that you should absolutely have in your chatbot, is adding a lot of emojis for your bot responses, but also analyzing emojis that your users might send you. For instance, a user might just send you a frowny face. It would be really like not a good experience if you didn't really understand what your user was trying to say. Or if your user sends like a happy face, it would be really nice if your bot understood what the user was trying to say. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about query refinement. Essentially, I say this a lot when it comes to chatbots, but I think context is king. I've said this, I think, over the course of the last 2-3 webinars as well. But having context on what your user is saying is essentially what could differentiate like a really good bot and a really bad bot. For instance, if someone says, "How much does the blue shirt cost?" You can give an answer, and that's, I think, a fairly simple question to answer for a chatbot. But then when the next question, if someone says, "And what about the green one?" A lot of chatbots will actually throw you an error because you haven't mentioned the word shirt in it, right? For a lot of chatbots, that is a missing entity. You have two entities in the first statement, blue, which is a color, and the type of garment or whatever, which is shirt. But in the second statement, you have only one entity, which is again color, green, but you're still missing the entity which is the type of garment. So I think retaining that entity and holding it for like say 2-3 levels of conversation makes a lot of sense and makes your bot that much more smarter. Because at the end of the day, you still have to be completely conversation based, and for a bot to throw an error for something like this, and what about the green one, and your bot throws an error, it'll really turn off your users. At the end of the day, answers to how much does the blue shirt cost and what about the green one is just search plus aggregation. For those of you who are familiar with databases, it's just a select star from table name, right? You're just essentially going to query your table and pull out all the t-shirts or shirts which have the color blue. So that is the simple part, but retaining context and making sure that everything, when a user refers to it in the next line of conversation and you still remember it, I think that's what really would make a difference to making a bot that much smarter. Something similar to query refinement is navigation, where you kind of combine some of these NLP things that we spoke about and a little bit about semantic search, right? And essentially, examples could be something like this, where you say, "Tell me about the platinum debit card." And then when you say something like, "What is the withdrawal limit?" you still have to remember we're still talking about the platinum debit card, right? And this can be a little complicated. So let's take the example of what is the withdrawal limit, right? And at some level, you'll have to kind of draw decision trees. So if it was a structured bot, you'd start at, okay, I have a bank account. Do you want to see debit or credit card? Okay, click on debit card. Do you want to see gold or platinum? You click on platinum. You get like withdrawal limit and cashback offers. So it's fairly simple if it is a structured bot or even if it was an app. But if it was something completely, conversation based or completely like a smart chatbot, your user can just directly ask you some question like, what is the withdrawal limit of a platinum debit card? Right, and then can just change that to tell me the cashback offers of a platinum credit card, right? So here you'll have to combine like a sort of semantic search and still use the decision trees to really arrive at the right answer. This is a little tricky there aren't too many chatbots out there that do it well, but I'm hoping one of you guys can really build one that can actually encapsulate all these features of NLP really well, and I can assure you your chatbot will be a really big hit. So those are the few features of chatbots that we think would really make your chatbot really smart, and those are a few things that you can use with regards to NLP. There are a few NLP tools available out there. I've just listed 6 of them. There are a lot more, of course. We have the famous ones are like IBM Watson, API.ai, Wit.ai. API.ai is of course owned by Google now, and Wit.ai is owned by Facebook. Google also has their machine learning it's not strictly NLP, but it's also the machine learning tool called TensorFlow that you can use in your chatbots. Microsoft has their own product out called Microsoft Louise, and Gupshup has a new NLP API called NLP on the fly, which we will be demoing to you at the end of this webinar. Sorry. So let's talk a little bit about the NLP on the fly API. The API is essentially created by Gupshup to kind of process natural language queries. And it is in a way very similar and very dissimilar from the other NLP tools that you've used. I'm sure some of you all are familiar with API.ai and bit.ai. The key difference here is there's no real need to train the model. Right? If you've used API.ai and if you've used bit.ai, you know that you'll have to train a particular model. If you're using, say, a weather bot, you'll have to really train the model a few times by entering, like, say, 20, 30 questions. Here, there is no real need to train the model. So, in effect, it works when you have, like, say, fewer entities. But at the same time, you'll have to specify few variations to the question that a user might ask. Right? And I'll show you a demo. The other cool thing about this API is it also includes the entity extraction. So not only are you getting an NLP API that you can use on the fly, but you're also getting entities extracted when there's a match. So here's the API. The thing you can see on top, it's api.gupshup.io/blah blah blah. The format is simple. You just have an API key. You can get an API key when you log in or when you create a Gupshup account. Just add a couple of headers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the JSON format in the next slide. So essentially, you send a JSON, right? And here's the format for the JSON. So the first field, which you see queries, in this case is I want to travel to San Francisco. That's what the user says, right? And then the rest of the JSON is basically intents that you've defined with variations for each intent. Let's look at intent 1. So there is a variation which is, say, travel to London. Right? It could be anything. It could be travel to London, travel to San Francisco, travel to Bangalore, whatever. And there are two entities in that particular statement. One entity in that particular statement. The entity is the location, and the entity in this particular case is London. Right? Now you can have various, different variations of the same statement, or you can have different statements itself. Let's look at entity number 3, where it has something to do with your chatbot, which is I will pay using credit card. So this is an example of a travel chatbot essentially, right? And we have intent number 4, which is about someone wanting to book a flight, right? So these are the various sort of parts to the NLP on the fly API. We'll show you a quick demo as to how this works, and my colleague Shreyans will take over this part of the demo. I'll just transfer the presentation to him. Yeah, Shreyans, Yep, you should see Shreyan's screen. I've transferred the.
All right, Sohan, thanks. That was a great talk, and hi everyone. So as Sohan mentioned that we'll show you a demo about the API where we have the JSON, which is quite for a travel bot, where user query can be something like I want to travel to San Francisco, I want to travel to London, I want to travel to Hong Kong or any place, and we want to extract. So now in our bot we have defined different flows, like if someone says travel to London, then we will process that he wants to go to London and show a right response to him. Or if someone since it is a travel bot, there could be option where he can pay. So when there could be a intent in your bot where you try to identify payment related queries. Now in this case, what intent NLP on the fly will do is match this query with all the intents which you have defined and give you the best possible outcome, along with certain metrics to judge whether you should use this or not. So if you can see, the entity extraction is not here right now, so we'll just see how the intent mapping will happen and what variation the system matches to first, and then we'll see the entity extraction. So let me just copy this JSON here. I have the API here. In the header I have my API key and everything, and in data I'm going to paste this, and let's run this. So if you see here, the query was I want to travel to San Francisco. Intent variation it picked up was travel to London. This is something system picked up, and it gave it a score like 0.37 as a score. So that's pretty decent score. So the system is trying to tell you, okay, I matched the intent of the user to travel to London with 0.37 score. That is like 37% of confidence. So if you want to take it forward, respond back to user, please go ahead. Now in the same query, I can go ahead and add entity extraction as well, where I will extract the location which user want to go, so that I can respond saying, okay, here are a few options to go to San Francisco or Hong Kong, anywhere. So I'm just going to copy paste because uh, I have all the things in the right format here. So entities, name is location. So when the response from the API will come, I'll have location equal to the desired location. So let me first remove this and paste my new query with entity extraction as well, and let me send this. Now if you see here, entities, there's a separate array of location where you have a field called entity, and it has location in it, which is San Francisco. So I want to travel to San Francisco. Now if I want to I want to say something else, like I want to go to uh, let's say another name, let's say Hong and Kong. Let's go to Hong Kong, let's send this. And if you see, the entity now extracted, the location is extracted as Hong Kong, and intent variation, again, it matched to travel to London, which we have defined, and the max score here is like 0.25, because the intent here has to be matched with want to go to. So yeah, so this is what the API can do. You can use it directly, you can send it uh, whatever you can send it the user query along with all the different intent variations which you have in your flow, and the best possible match will be figured out and send it back. Now we also want to demo this, how you can use it directly on Gupshup, because you can, one way is either you use the API, another way is we also are building a new tool called bot scripting tool, which is right now in beta. You can send us requests to get access to, but if you're using that bot scripting tool directly, you can create your bot then and there. You don't even have to worry about API, and everything will be taken care by that. So let me show you a quick demo of the same concept which we are talking right now. Let's go to my bot section. Okay, now let me just click on plus and say NLP demo, and say demo. Next, let me code your bot, create. Right, now let me go into this, and I'll go to the new IDE which we have created. So if many of you might have used Gupshup, and you would have seen that the previous IDE was just one file system. Now we are trying to expand it to a complete development tool, which will be much better and much easier to use. So yeah, this is my all default code, and if I open this SCR, so this is the main file where you define the user flow. Like, it has different states like bot state, user state, and bot state. So the first foremost is the bot state. Whenever your bot is interacted with, that's the that's the state which is going to be sent to the user. That's the response, and then if user inquires something, it will go. So let me just quickly and we also have this. I'm not sure why it is not working. Oh wow. Just give me a moment. Some resizing of this. Okay, so without we will give you we'll do another webinar on this tool completely, but without further delay, let me just quickly show you how we can deal with this scenario right through the tool. All right, let me leave this as it is. Instead, we'll say I can help you with your travel needs. And okay, this is done. Now the next state I have to do is just a moment. Yeah, so the next state I'm going to do is what user want to say, and that's what I had put as like travel to London, right? So I'll put it like travel to London, and since I want to extract the entity, what I'm going to do is just put say location on London like this. Yeah, and here I'll say okay, fetching details for flights to and location, right? And that's it. And then I'm also going to say there might be a query about visit London, and I will ask when are you visiting visiting, and then this again I'll just put this also as extract the visiting. All right, let me save this, and we will just directly, or we can see activate the project because we have a local simulator as well to test this out. Let me show you there then and there itself, and then we'll see it on Facebook Messenger. Bot response with travel need. I will say I want to travel to let's say Hong Kong. Okay, fetching details for flight to Hong Kong. Now, what this tool did is it actually created all this as the variations which we send into the API, and then it got the best match from the API saying, okay, this is what it matches to, and the response for it is sent to the user. Now we can also test this out, test this out on Facebook Messenger. Let me deploy this and quickly open my messenger. Oh shit. Messenger. We'll use the Gupshup proxy bot to do this. Yeah, it takes some time to deploy with the new tool, around 30 seconds. So just keep this time till that's say proxy. Let's be ready. Once it's deployed, I'll say proxy NLP demo. If you're not familiar with Gupshup, then you can go ahead and read all the documentation which is here. Gupshup proxy bot is a tool which we have created for testing any bot, because without publishing your bot you cannot test. So we have created Gupshup proxy bot on every channel which we support, so that you can while development you can test your bot. So read about it on the documentation section. We have test your bot which talks about it. This one. Not sure why this is taking so much time. Yeah. So NLP demo. Yeah, and I'll say I want to go to, let's say, Mumbai. Okay, fetching the flight details to Mumbai. So there you go. Go ahead and try using the NLP on the fly APIs. Will you can request us for access, as well as you can request us for access to this new IDE where you can create bots using it, and then we would love to hear back from you for the feedbacks. Over to you, Sohan, to conclude.
Hey, thanks, Shreyans. That's a great demo, and I'm sure everyone here definitely wants to try it out now. I'm just going to share my screen. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, keep them coming. We have a few questions already, and yeah, essentially this was a demo. So we have a couple of questions regarding the NLP tool itself. Before that, I want to talk to you a little bit about Gupshup itself. So Gupshup essentially is a bot building platform. We are one of the most advanced platforms in the world right now, and we're the quickest and easiest way to build bots. So we essentially have tools for the entire life cycle. What you just saw is one of the tools that forms our entire platform. We're not just an NLP company, for those of you who are not familiar. So do check it out. We have everything that enables you to develop, to test, to deploy, publish, and even analyze your chatbot. Essentially, what we do with every webinar is we take one facet. Last week it was testing a chatbot. The week before that it was building a chatbot on Google Home. So this time we've spoken specifically about the NLP component. And yeah, let's just go to the questions right now. So Max has asked a question on what is the best practice to use the API. That's a good question, Max. So essentially, I mean, from a personal point of view, I think the API works best when used with the conjunction with the new IDE, which Shreyans just demoed to you all. The IDE will be available to all developers very soon. Right now it's in beta, so like Shreyan said, just write to us on developer@gupshup.io and we'll give you beta access. You can try it out. If you want to use the IDE, I mean the API in itself, you feel free to go ahead. Right now, all you need is an API key. The best sort of way would be, if you have fewer intents essentially in your API in your code. So essentially, right now it can take up to, and I'm just checking that's about 200 different variations, right? That's little more than that, and the API takes a little time. So if you have less than 200 variations, that's when it kind of works best. What we recommend is you can either read all these variations from a file, or you can, depends on what type of code you're what sort of coding methodology you're using, but you can also choose to do it dynamically and include it in your code itself. Just have a function that creates this JSON for you and keep sending. Every time a user sends you a query, keep sending that JSON over so that there is an intent matching. And you can test the intent score and vary it based on your usage. Right now we recommend something between anything above say 0.35 onwards is a good match, but that's something you can really play around with and figure out what works best for your chatbot. Okay. So Samrat asked, did you guys use deep learning for chatbots? So Samrat, essentially, like I said, we are a chatbot building platform, so we have a whole bunch of tools to create chatbots. This is one tool that you can use and integrate natural language processing into your chatbot. This particular tool uses a lot of different sort of NLP engines and deep learning algorithms out there to really predict what best matches. So in effect, yes, we have used some sort of algorithms to kind of figure that out. Mukund has asked how to request for this tool. So Mukund, I'm just going to the last slide, which is this. And essentially just mail us at this email ID that you see here. It's developer@gupshup.io. You can also tweet to us at twitter.com/gupshup. We'll need a couple of details like your API key and stuff like that from you to enable it. And yeah, you can play around with it. The documentation for this also is up, the starter documentation. Also at this point, I would like to say we do webinars every week. Most Thursdays we do a webinar, so keep a lookout on gupshup.io/webinars. We have a lot of cool products out there. We'd also love to hear about the chatbots that you're building, so do write to us and tell us about the chatbots that you're building. Sriram asked, do we have the recordings of this webinar? Yes, Sriram, anyone who's registered for the webinar will get a recording in the email by tomorrow. So yeah. Okay, Sanjay asks why there's no mobile app to use Gupshup in Handy. I'm not sure what your question here, Sanjay, is. So, like I said, Gupshup is a chatbot building platform, and essentially you can build chatbots that you can deploy on anything from Facebook Messenger to Slack to Skype, Google Voice, SMS, to your website, and even to a mobile app. So, if you want to build a chatbot within a mobile app, it's not something we recommend because people are moving away from the whole app usage and moving away to the messaging paradigm, but you can still do that using Gupshup as well. Okay. Andrea asks how many languages supports the NLP API. That's a good question, Andrea. Right now, the API is in its infancy, so we support only English. But it's just a matter of time before we start supporting the major languages. Uh, so yeah, just keep a lookout. At the same time, I'd be remiss if I didn't say some of the other API tools. I mean, NLP tools like API.ai and Bit.ai do support the major languages like French, German, Spanish, etc. So if you have like a very specific sort of use case, you can use them. That being said, Gupshup platform, while creating the chatbot since it's based in Unicode, it supports pretty much any language in terms of building the chatbot. So if you want to build something that's fairly structured and with some text matching involved, you can use pretty much any language on the platform. Yeah. Okay, hope that answered everyone's questions. If you have any other questions that you forgot to ask or that you might think of later, just email us at developer@gupshup.io. That brings an end to this webinar. We'll send you the recording by tomorrow. Thanks a ton for being here, and if you like the webinar, do tweet to us. We always love to read your tweets. And yeah, have a good day. See you guys soon. Thank you.